Welcome to Conversation Mill. Join me as I talk to individuals stepping out to pursue their passions, from small business owners to community leaders, and learn with me how we can work together to support our local communities and local economies. Visit conversationmill.com to learn more, but now please join us in conversation. If you know me, you know I break for goats. So to sit down with John and Rachel Palacino and talk all things goats, including the benefits of raw milk, was an educational pleasure. John and Rachel bring their love for people to their farm and to the goat milk soap they create. They started in raw goat's milk to address John's migraines, but quickly saw the benefits it could provide to others. After a tragic accident necessitated a lifestyle and career change, John and Rachel launched full-time into creating red clay soap. I know you will enjoy getting to know John and Rachel through our conversation today, but I also encourage you to continue to learn and research more about the benefits of raw milk. And if you are interested in learning more about creating your own goat farm, you can attend the upcoming Goat Farming Basics Workshop, September 24th, that John and Rachel will be hosting at their farm, Double Blessings Farm. Space is limited, but you can visit redclaysoap.com to secure your spot today. Join me now in conversation with Red Clay Soap. Well, this Wisconsin girl is really happy to be on a farm today. I can tell you that much. It's not a dairy farm, but a goat farm. So I would love for you guys to tell us about the goats that you have on this farm and what you are up to with your goat's milk.
Well, yes, we have been a DHEC certified dairy since about 2000. Got our first goats in 1998. And we decided it would be a good idea to get certified because people began to knock on the door and say, we really need this goat milk. And so I joke about not wanting to bootleg the liquid gold. So we wanted to make sure that we got certified. I was carrying a RN license at the time. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that it was a grade A dairy, and DHEC came out and checked the milk. And so we've been selling the milk for years, but that became another small business through that with some of the milk. And that's when Red Clay Soap came on the scene. Not more than midway through about the year 2011.
Now, Rachel was making soap the whole time just as a hobby because the herd started to grow pretty quick. In the early days, it was hard to cull and we became attached to everyone. And so we kept growing the herd. And by 2005, we probably had 50 animals.
Oh, wow.
That was including all the babies, because goats usually, it's common for twins, but triplets is not uncommon either. And, there's a joke about how many goats is too much, and everybody has a varying sense of what is goat hoarding and what should be culled and what's an obsession, what's an addiction, and then what really needs to move on to another place. I didn't say plate, I said place.
Place. Uh-huh.
And so that was just a lot of work. I was still working as a nurse part-time. He was traveling in video work. And we just decided we need to regroup. And we were milking by hand up to 80 gallons a week and taking it around the upstate to different stores. And it's still the same today. If you don't have your own hay fields to generate the feed you need for the winter, you have to get to the point where there's a mathematical balance of how many mouths to feed is too many mouths compared to how much you can actually get for this fluid milk.
For income. Yeah,
sure.
To balance it out.
So to back up a little bit, you mentioned the certification process to become a grade A dairy. What is that process like?
Well, and should there be a DHEC person out there, they don't even like us to use that term anymore of grade A. And I just find out recently, they just like you to say DHEC certified.
Yeah.
And really, I will say this for our DHEC agents in South Carolina, when it comes to the raw milk movement, they've always been a part of it. They've always been supportive of it. They've always seen the benefits of it. They also grant the freedom to do it. Whereas the states around us and many others in the country, even to have cow or goat milk shares is getting really difficult.
Yes.
And so we've been liberated in that area for years. And I call them the good old boys. They're not going to change.
That's great.
Even though they've had peer pressure, they're not going to change. So you'll see dappled all over South Carolina, raw sheep, raw cow, raw goat. And I don't know how many there are left. It kind of ebbs and flows. There'll be some that'll start and then, they'll kind of crash and burn, and then others will start, and there's longevity.
It's pretty labor intensive. We've seen probably, we lost count actually, but there's probably well beyond a dozen farms that, started and stopped in the past 20 years that we've seen this happen.
And do you think that's because they grow too fast and can't keep up with what they're doing? Because maybe they start like you guys,
That's
two
one
people.
of the reasons. I mean, that can be, they can also not project far enough or wise enough how much labor this was really going to take.
It does change your life. So I'll try to answer that other question about DHEC. What they require is obviously, everybody likes this, the cleanliness factor.
Exactly.
There's a certain amount of sinks you have to have. You have to have the station set up the way they want it. And John, you could talk about that.
It's regulated very well, like anything. It's primarily a safety issue. And it has to be processed a certain way, and you have to follow the rules. Wash, rinse, sanitize, standard like restaurant stuff.
Sure.
And so it's really for a public protection, and so we would expect, because you're selling to the public, especially a raw product.
And the temperature. Oh, excuse me. The temperature control has to go to a certain level within 2 hours.
Right. Well, and the information was prevalent about the benefits, the health benefits and nutritional benefits of the raw product. Mm-hmm. And once you pasteurize and homogenize, especially the pasteurization process just is not necessary.
Well, it takes away all the good things that come out of that. I say the liquid gold, everything that you need for gut health, because the clients. All right, we're not making a medical claim on this podcast.
No,
I
not at
will
all.
say that this information is out there. So I'm not playing Dr. Rach. I'm saying that let's just put a quotes, they say that children who drink raw goat milk have less need for their nebulizer if they have asthmatic episodes. When I was in the OR, I worked a lot in the ear, nose, and throat, and I would tell the guys, I would say this, can you just kind of get some of these kids off cow milk for a while? Just see what happens. Mm-hmm. Just see what happens. Maybe it'll help their congestion, because that was the main reason we started. John had congestions and headaches. Mm-hmm. The kids had congestion, and there was a complete change in their respiratory system when we moved to raw goat milk.
And it was actually very quick. We had a naturopathic chiropractor who said, do an elimination diet, go off the cow dairy, and you'll know. You'll know within a couple of weeks. And sure enough, it had to be less than a month, 2 to 3 weeks. It's like everything dried up. And
was it because of the pasteurized cow milk, or just because it was cow milk?
Well, I think that there are dairy people I've talked to that are cow, and they'll say that their raw cow milk does not have the effects of the pasteurization and homogenation. So I will support that. Because of the allergies that they have just in cow milk alone, I'm not going to go and do that test because we're doing well. But I could believe that could be true. But once you heat treat it, every enzyme in there, everything for your natural health is now been heated away, boiled away, whatever.
It's been killed.
And so we did have old-timey doctors that would send their patients that had ulcers. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, some open heart surgeons, you can read about the ones on there, would put their post-op patients on raw goat milk. It kept Gandhi alive.
Do you have, I actually just listened to a podcast about Gandhi drinking goat's milk.
And how his wife kind of had to sneak it in there.
Yes, she did.
With his holistic doctor, because he was so adamant. And it saved his life. So he
got to the point later on, you see him getting on the plane with his goat.
Goat on a rope. Goat on a rope in a boat.
Take him with him.
So, okay. So let's back up, because there's a lot of good information there. And this is something that I have conversations with people about all the time, about how I'm so apprehensive to go to doctors because I don't like when they don't give me a holistic option or they
Right.
don't give me a natural option first.
Yes.
And that's never the first thing.
No.
In my experience,
Right.
in my limited experience, because I've just been researching things and then healing myself. So that's one of my things about going to doctors is it scares me because you're going to make me feel bad because I don't want to take a pill to heal this if
Right.
I don't have to. Now,
Right.
there are things, modern medicine is beautiful. There are some things you should definitely take
Yes.
medication for.
Sure.
So that's like my disclaimer to
Sure,
that.
and we're not against that.
Yeah. However, there are certain things that taking a natural product like raw goat's milk is going to help or heal.
It's true.
Where else can people find and read more about this if they want to? Because it's just us talking on a podcast.
I would suggest a book by Jordan Rubin. And I
Okay.
wish I had the title, but he was near death at his college age. He was skin and bone from Crohn's disease. And he got on raw goat milk, and it was a game changer. Now, he did other holistic things to build his body back up, but what it did for his gut health, and I know that's the big buzzword right now, but what it did for his gut literally changed his life. So getting back to that pro golfer, I will not mention his name, but his nutritionist said, when you get to the upstate, you need to find a certified raw milk dairy, and you need to stay on it while you're traveling. And so they would come down from that area of the upstate where famous golfers go and pick up their half a gallon of milk for him, so that, because that's what they did to cook. So if I've got to make muffins or fettuccine sauce or cheese for lasagna, or yes, ice cream even we made last night for some company, everything is goat milk. It's the same ratio. It's just a replacement. I will say that I read a very heady article that you as a researcher will find very interesting about is it an enzyme, something released in the process of homogenization that's a known carcinogen and very bad for your health. And something about this catalyst in homogenization is like a no-go.
And that happens because the reason that they have to do that is because goat milk is naturally homogenized.
Oh,
So it
nothing
does not
floats to
have
the
be
top in
homogenized.
fat form.
Fat globules are so small, our body can assimilate it.
So the molecules are so different, and I'll use a big medical term, not that big. It doesn't aggregate in your vessels. So that's why the cardiologists like it. There's a colleague cardiologist, he's not from this country, left his lucrative practice. Why? To sell freeze-dried goat milk and start a freeze-dried goat milk company. Because he knew that this would not clump in your vessels. We had some kids that were failure to thrive, and the pediatrician was like up in
Babies.
arms.
yeah.
There was no formula that worked. Guess who was taking care of the babies? Grandma. Grandma came, got the goat milk. Guess who got chubby little folds?
Uh-huh.
And the pediatrician, whatever you're doing is great. Yeah, well, we're doing what you never suggested.
Well, and that makes total sense to me because humanity has survived pre all of these
Right,
things.
right.
And that's always my argument to modernization and quote unquote progress is, but we've survived
Yeah, what did they used to do?
without all these things. So
Right.
if
It's a complete food.
yes.
It's a complete food. And when you look up the constituents of raw goat milk, okay, everyone's heard this. It's the closest to mom's milk.
Human milk.
And it's so easily digestible. The casein is different, the
The
protein.
structure of it.
So
Sure.
that's why people who like, oh my gosh, I just had, a milkshake, and like, okay, where's the restroom at this, fair at South Carolina Fairgrounds? And they know it because they're cramping right away. And so it really does not affect you the way the cow milk does. The other thing is, getting back to another situation, is eczema. They talk about children who drink raw goat milk don't have as many flare-ups with their eczema, which is why we think the soap
Works so well.
Yes.
works so well. And that's not a medical claim.
Yep.
These are known facts. You could just click around.
Yeah, this is all out there. This is
No
all out
fact checker is going to say that's not true.
And that book by Jordan Rubin was Patient Heal Thyself.
Yes, that is
Yep.
it.
Thank you.
It's
for
a
pulling
good
that up.
read about what happened to him and his journey to good health again.
And there's another resource that we recommend often, and it is the Weston A. Price Foundation. Is that not it?
Yeah.
Weston A. Price Foundation. And they have been around for a long time.
Would I say that they're really lobbyists in D.C.? Because there are people in surrounding states that use the Weston A. Price Foundation to try to get a voice to these powers that be of why are you so opposed to this?
But our biggest thing is that the humans need it. It's like pure medicine to the gut. And to think that all a person has to do, a little family can get 2 animals and take care of themselves with this healthy drink for generation. Why is this, this needs to be easily accessible.
This is why I tell people, don't keep buying milk from us. Don't. Just get a goat.
Get a goat. Okay.
I mean, not everybody can be in Silverleaf and Sugar Creek and, wherever,
do that,
North Hills and get that. But I mean, if you really, sometimes it takes very little to be sustainable. And sometimes that's 2 miniature breed goats and it's just enough. It's just enough. And it's doable, especially you have woods. By the way, you don't need pasture. Goats love woods.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about how they're not grazers, really. They're browsers. So give me all the woods. Let me clear it.
They'll eat your brambles. And
give me the kudzu.
And your, woodsy thicket.
They need the woody stems for good health.
So circling back to only about 20 states allowing the raw milk. And in South Carolina, clearly we're blessed by having, freedoms when it comes to that. What would you say to somebody living in a state where they don't have raw milk? On the state level, who should they be writing to, going to? Where should they start?
I think they should start with the Weston A. Price Foundation. I think they should start with a grassroots movement. But I will say it doesn't take a lot to get certified if you wanted to sell it. Because years ago on our little Texas property, I call them the clipboard people. And they had a few people that came on a mini tour that were kind of official-like, and they wanted to show them that you can be certified on a very small scale and it still work. And because tell her the size of your original processing room.
Our original processing room was just built for us. We didn't know we were going to become these people. So I just built a barn, and our processing room was a 6x8.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, with a triple sink in it and an ice maker, and it was just for me.
Yeah.
I could turn around in a standing position. That's all I could do. But all I had to do was process the milk. And when they saw how clean and how tight, and it was like, well, never quite seen it done this way, but it works. When we came here, we refined we had used that dairy for close to 22 years, I guess. And then we moved here 4 years ago, and this barn was already existing, but pretty much empty. So we were able to configure it exactly the way we wanted. And I was able to solve every issue I had at the other barn. And it's just, I think it's state of the art for me. For a small time operation, but with big time results. I mean, we turned it out. Everybody doesn't have to have that kind of facility. You can do this in your backyard. We encourage people, we call it homesteading.
Yeah.
Backyard dairy. And you and a family of 4 with 2 animals and a small pen and a hut, and you're good to go.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about what you guys did before you got into this. I mean, you've mentioned that you were a nurse, so you were kind of already in that healthcare, in that mindset of how do I take care of myself? How do I take care of people? But tell us a little bit more about each of your backgrounds career-wise, because how did you pivot that to what you're doing now?
Well, I'll tell you what, we
can start from the.
I'll start from
the headaches, because health-wise, pain is a high motivator, and it got to the point where I was so frustrated. A migraine every week. Come on, we got to get to the bottom of this, and we finally I got frustrated enough to say we got to find out what's causing this. Well,
so when we did the elimination diet years ago, and then we realized that that the cow milk was a problem for my second born too, and now we found out Tony.
So 2 of our children, and probably a third that he just won't admit it.
So
I'm so glad I don't have problems with dairy. I'm from Wisconsin, and I'm full of cheese. It's actually what runs
because
through
he'll
my
go
veins.
downtown. He had guests from Georgia, and they went downtown for crepes. Well, everything that he ordered had milk in
Cream.
it and cream and everything. And so, I hate to say this, but he had to pop 2 Advil. I said, "What did you have today?" And it's not like he's 7, but I want to know, what did you eat today? And there's just, you launch, you race to launch. If you know this is going to give you a headache, okay, there's nothing mommy can do. So in this situation, we had so much kudzu on Little Texas Road. We knew we were going to have to go to another form of milk because we weren't willing to give it up. And
Yeah, he just says, doctor says, cut out all dairy. Well, last name is Palacino, and you're going to say no cheese, no milk, no scamotes. I mean, this isn't going to fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
so what we did was we said, you know what? It's time to get some goats to clear all this, and we'll milk them. Like you just say, easy peasy. And so we're not going to talk about the first one we got as a test that ended up in Paris Mountain. No. We owned it for about 42 seconds.
But we did a lot
But
of
he
research.
did. It was like a test goat, like come over here and see if you eat. He was a wild thing with big horn. Oh, it was scary.
And then he decided he was free range.
Yeah. Well,
Very
listen.
free.
He went to
Very
another
free.
farm. No, not a plate. And so we go, okay, let's regroup. And so I began to
lot of
research
research.
different dairy goat breeds. And then I went to something a little bit more reputable called the American Dairy Goat Association. And Denise was selling La Manchas, and she had 1 or 2 in milk, I believe. And I think 1 in milk and a friend, because they have to go in pairs.
And La Mancha, is that a good dairy goat?
Docile,
It is a good
smart,
dairy goat.
American bred here. The only one
A
here.
little bit funny looking, so not everybody likes what they look like. 'Cause
Go
they
for
have
ears.
Issues with their ears.
Okay.
They look like
they are
aliens.
very good dairy breed.
Do a good butter fat, easy in the milk stand. We got 2 from her, and 1 she sold me 1 as a really good discount. I mean, huge, because you want him to have a friend.
It hadn't kidded, and she thought it was broken.
She thought it just had reproductive issues. So within like 3 weeks, maybe 2, we hear this little sound in the field.
Oh, wow.
And I called her and I said, Denise, you sold me this for a lot of money off because you thought she was kind of reproductively flawed.
Challenged.
And I said, but there's a little cute fluffy white baby in my field. It's adorable. And I said, I need to bring the baby to you.
Yeah.
She goes, oh no, you're just double blessed. And I said in every Southern accent you can imagine, I just said back, thank you, Jesus.
So we named the farm Double Blessing Farm.
And I would milk like the first 5 years in the morning because it's funny. He said, I don't really want to do that. So I would be doing that like 5 or 5:30 and coming in St. Francis on 2 wheels. And back then, the nurses made fun of me. The doctors made fun of me. They thought it was just the weirdest thing. And now it's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
We were like before our time. This is 1998.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, wow, you got chickens. Oh, wow, you want to go? And then when it's funny when they say, you're living our dream. No, because we don't really go to weddings and funerals.
Right.
Right. We don't like get on a plane and go to Hawaii. We are home.
It's a commitment. It's a commitment,
total
especially on this type of level too, with what you're doing.
Yes.
So back to your question, she was milking early on. Because in the beginning, I kind of considered this her idea. I wasn't.
But you capitulated,
I
Barry.
wasn't totally on board right up front. But I was a contractor, so I could build whatever we needed. So I was committed to that regard because I wasn't saying no. And but she would get up early. I mean, we're talking like 5 o'clock, and she'd go milk before she left for work. It's because she had to be in the OR by 7. So it was quite a commitment, especially on her part, getting us rolling. But then that only lasted for a year or 2. Oh, 5 years?
And then I got the flu.
That's
and I got the flu, and you were forced to learn how to milk them.
She did get sick, and then it was like, you're going to have to go. I knew how to milk.
Yeah.
It's just she was doing it, so I let her do it. And then it came to that point where I can't move. You got to do this. And that day everything flipped. And so I basically took over and never looked back. I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And so we just flipped. And then I became the milker, and then we were growing the herd, like I said, and we were talking morning chores were running 2.5 hours. We were milking 18 to 19 animals by hand.
Wow.
And I was a television producer at the time and also a pastor. And so, we just had to work a schedule that allowed me to still do those things. And And then when we finally had an aha moment about this is not profitable enough, then that's when the soap business actually was born. And it happened concurrently with another bit of a tragedy that occurred in 2011. So this is about back it's been about 11 years now, hasn't it?
In 11.
So in the middle of all this, Rach had a serious brain injury, a traumatic brain injury, and our whole lives changed again. And
Right.
everything stopped. So she couldn't be a nurse anymore. I couldn't travel anymore. Everything came home. And so now everything, my son said, look, you can't do what you were doing. So let's just launch this goat milk soap that you've been making because people love it and you know how to do it. So let's make it a business.
We were on the precipice of talking to an investor right before the accident about getting soap processed in a huge plant in New England that makes for like Lancome, Kiss My Face, Avon, Oil of Olay, and
all the big names.
And they, of course, we knew it was assembly line stuff, and we were so naive. Let's give them our little recipe, and they'll do it for us, like, won't they?
Yeah.
No,
well, they strung us along. We were coming all the way to the end, and we were going to place our first order with them. It was time to sign
5,000 bars.
Time to sign on the line, and we said, you've got our recipe, and you're going to follow it, right? And I said, well, we've already got a certain line that we're going to use, and then after it comes out, then we'll inject it with an ounce or two of goat milk, and you're good to go. And we're like, what? So we found out just before we were signing that they weren't going to do our recipe at all.
They said, we really can't do this. No.
Because we were using fresh goat milk, 25% in every bar.
Mm-hmm. I thank you so much for sharing that story, because I think that's so, so important for people to hear, especially you had the integrity about your product too, though, and we're connected to it, which is so important. And if you're coming to it with integrity and you're saying this is a handmade product or this is 25% goat's milk, and now somebody's going to do 10%, how do you feel at the end of that process?
We wouldn't let it happen. It just can't go that way.
They would get massive quantities, tractor trailers of soap shreds.
This is soap that's already made.
Already made with the lye process. So then that goes through their big industrial machines.
So it's an unscented soap shred, and then they make it into whatever they're going to make it into.
Whatever kind of oils you wanted, fragrances you wanted. I know for me personally, if I ever go, and I haven't been in there in years, but if I go in TJ Maxx and I go through that soap thing, like literally, it's almost a migraine, which just commercial. Why we make ours now, they all have individual scents and you can smell them, but they're not overwhelming. No. Because I don't want to give anybody a migraine. And I want to list the ingredients because, my goodness, if you're allergic to lemongrass, which happens to be my niece, it happens. I want you to know there's lemongrass in here. Right. If you can't do lavender and that gives you a migraine, that's not uncommon. I want you to know there's lavender in here. And the biggest thing, people are getting allergic to coconut oil now. Oh. Even organic. Can't do coconut oil. So I had some ladies too that were under radiation treatment for breast cancer. And they actually came to us and said, you know what, we can't do the coconut oil in here. Can you make us a single oil-based soap, and preferably olive oil, which is how the Castile bar and the lavender fields came about.
Tell me about the ingredients that are in your soap, because you are listing them all. So we already covered, and obviously anything that's proprietary, don't share, but
sure.
You guys are listing all the ingredients on your product. Yes. And what are some of those ingredients that you're putting in there?
Honestly, the ingredients we're using are not that special. You go online and you click on different kind of recipes. Olive oil, coconut oil, palm oil, and castor oil are common soap making oils. Now everybody's recipe is different.
Sure.
But those are very common, very common. So that's not what's making it special. What we believe is making our bar special is the goat milk. Because when we first started, we were told by several people that it wasn't going to work. We decided we wanted to replace all of the water that you have to use to reconstitute the lye. The liquid factor of the recipe, you couldn't replace it completely with milk. You just had to dilute it, and you can add some milk, but you can't replace it with all milk. And we kept experimenting and saying, why? It goes back to that question. Somebody tells you can't be done. Well, that's why we're going to try it.
Right.
Because why can't it be done? Why can it not be done? And we never found a good reason. And so we don't dilute our goat milk at all. It's pure goat milk, and we
no
think
distilled water.
that's what's making it so good for your skin.
Because
the pH of the goat milk is almost exactly the same as the human skin.
What's the common denominator? The fresh goat milk.
Yeah.
That's the magic bullet. Maybe that's why Cleopatra bathed in milk. I don't know. But there is such thing as milk baths.
Yeah.
You know, and I believe it's what's on outside that you're using, and it's what inside that you're ingesting that makes the difference, you know, in your health. And so again, I feel like we needed to get to the point where the recipe stayed the same.
Right.
And
when we found out that, back to that other story, when they were going to alter it, we shut the whole thing down. We're like, you know what? We have to do this ourselves.
Yeah.
If they're not going to do what we asked, we have to do it ourselves.
And then we got to wait now for the first few years until I found out I had a nut allergy. And I don't know about shea butter, you know, how that would affect me. But, you know, like almond oil is real big in skincare. Shea butter. Frankly, the recipe that we have, I prefer over some of those early ones that sometimes we use at the holiday. Like I had an apple butter with shea butter. I'm telling you, the way he proportioned his lye discount and the ratios of these oils. And let me say this very clearly for the ones that are worried about any primate that is not having, you know, good palm leaves to eat.
Not having dinner tonight.
Right.
This is sourced so far
Organically
from that
sourced.
problem, organically sourced.
Responsibly.
And I can show you, even though it's a podcast, the paperwork to prove it. It's organic, sustainable palm oil, because there's some palm people out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I did hear you mention that, and I had that like tucked away in my brain to ask you when we got done. So thank you.
No, you know us. We love all animals.
And there's one other factor that also makes a really big difference between the commercials, what we call commercial soaps, and ours, and handmade soap. And that is that the handmade process keeps and preserves all of the natural glycerin in the soap. And it's the glycerin that brings the majority of the feel that you have on your skin when you're done using it. The commercial soaps strip all of that out because they can make more money with that, making other products.
Other byproducts.
And so then they inject other artificial foaming agents and lathering agents to make it feel that way again, but it's no longer real soap. So the commercial soaps tend to be more, we consider them more as detergents, which is that will strip the oil right off your skin, and you'll feel good while you're in there. But when you come out, give it 20 or 30 minutes and you're itchy.
Right.
Because
you want to keep those natural oils of your skins. I think this is such a perfect, and we didn't plan it this way when we talked at the farmer's market of what we were going to talk about today, but I love the way the conversation's going because it's really taking us back to what the heart of this podcast is, which is by keeping things local and by keeping things on a smaller scale and knowing who's behind making your product, it changes the game. Like it changes everything. It becomes healthier for you. On a spiritual level, it's better for you because you're connected to the person that's making your product. And
almost relational.
Yes. And you can feel comfortable. Like you mentioned, those customers that were going through chemo treatments, being able to come down and say, hey, coconut oils, we can't have it anymore. What could you do for us? And you have the ability to make that. And you're not just servicing those two women. Now you're servicing anybody who might be going through chemo, and it's done. The product's made, and it all was developed through that relationship. But again, you guys using that example of we almost signed this really big deal with a big manufacturer. We see how when you go that big, they have no choice but to start making some of these cuts to save money, whether that's for payroll, whether that's for health benefits for their employees, whatever it may be. It might not even be that they're super greedy. I don't want to, for lack of a better word,
but it's part of a machine.
It becomes a machine. It becomes impersonal. Because when you grow, that's what happens. And there is greed included in that as well, because some of these companies go public and now they have shareholders and they have margins they have to hit. Where on a local level, yes, you're going to be impacted a lot more if you can't move that product financially on your end. But if you build those relationships, you also have the ability to sustain when other things in the economy might be going wrong, because people are going to come back to you because they have that relationship with you.
And to hitchhike on that happened when the pandemic pandemic appeared. And that those calendars over there, can you see them printed, Rebecca?
Yes.
That John prints every year. They were full of sticky notes of all the schools and all the nursing homes that were coming.
Right.
And then this happened,
for tours.
for tours. I just remember being in here crying and just taking all the stickers off to make a
Everything
blank
stopped.
calendar. Everything stopped. And I'm just going to say this, going back to the local relationship, we didn't ask for this. It's so easy to go on Facebook and just cry and say, can I have a GoFundMe? Because, what am I going to do? What happened was people who were using the product were so concerned we were going to go out of business. We had a pocket of people from another state that all ordered our soap, and they sponsored a goat.
They said, what can we do?
In March of
We gotta have
2020.
our soap.
And then we had some people in the community knock on our door. It's humbling, yes, but it's so loving. It's so nurturing. It's so what work our community is about.
The relational.
Yeah.
These are real people who are making a real thing that I really want to help.
And so it blows my mind when people who might be their first visit to the TR market and they'll say, did you make this soap? Or so do you have a goat farm? And we'll have pictures of goats and, goat milk soap. And John has this beautiful chalkboard, goat milk soap with the prices. And so very few people actually read the signage these days. And every time people actually do, I say, are you a teacher? They go, no, I'm just very interested. But that's what we find. And that is why when we came here, the first thing he thought, this rhymes, is parking lot. We've got to have a place for people to park.
Yes.
Because they're going to want to come.
But we make these tours. The tour price hasn't changed in whether you want to have a birthday party
It's still $10.
or whether you want to have a shower or a wine and cheese party with your, whatever.
But we want to make it affordable for the schools.
Yeah.
So that price hasn't changed since we started the tours. And then the concerts kind of morphed. And by the way, plug November, is it 4th? We're going back to Jazz in the Farm because people have asked. We've got a food truck lined up, and that's November 4th. And so
and I can vouch that the events on the farm are good. I came for a Christmas.
There you go.
Yeah. Christmas one that was wonderful. And I got to hug a goat.
Yes. So. And that's how the Blueberry Festival started. We would always go to Roper Mountain for their July Blueberry Fest, and it shut down. And I just had this little voice on my head say, you do it. You're outside, you do it. And people just came. And the vendors did great. We said, okay, then we need to do other vendor events. So that morphs to last year, we started the October Grateful Market. We had one a few years ago and it was just in November. And they said, well, why not have the whole month of October? And it was so successful because again, in this relationship of community, they're here to support every other vendor we have here. A Little Girl Face Creations. We want to give young entrepreneurs, kind of like their first start.
I love that.
And Faith made a lot of money with her incredible crocheted stuffed animals. I mean, my grandkids got 2 of them. And she was like, I think she was in disbelief.
Amazed.
And a lot of these people is it bivocational? I mean, they're doing this artisan thing on the side, but they actually have a real 9 to 5. But this is something they've loved to do. They've decided to branch out, and we want to make that outlet for you. These are not people you'll see at the downtown market or the TR market, but they're people that want to get their foot in the door and say, like, remember Horton Hears a Who? And they say in the little play, we are here, we are here. We want the community to know that they are here. And if they come in October and meet them face to face, they might just send them a message on Instagram and say, I bought that candle, or I bought that apron, that farm apron, and I've got a cousin who's got like 17 chickens now. Can I order an apron? We want to launch you because we know what it's like to do this small business thing. And we want them to know that we've got their back.
And I think what I'd love to do is come for one of the markets and just set up the podcast and let the entrepreneurs come and talk about their goods. And then we'll post it.
Wonderful.
And then everybody can hear a little bit of what everybody's doing and kind of get a taste of it. And they can find them on Instagram. And if they can't make it to a market because they don't live here, they can look them up on their website and order something.
That you're brilliant. Did anybody tell you that today? Because you need to know that you're brilliant.
Thank you.
And so then going back to that is what we want to promote here. I have to say, I love our TR community.
What makes Travelers Rest so special? Like, what is it the local government there that's done this? Is it the local entrepreneurs that have really gotten together? Because that's what I keep hearing from going. That's the farmers market I go to. There's just something about it that's very inviting. It's a little bit of a drive for me, but it's
Cheers. It's like the first time we walked into the Travelers Rest Feed and Seed. Hey, Leah, there's a plug for you. Commercial. It's just like you were family. No, and I really mean that. The first time I walked in there was a synergy. There was a connection. They were farmers, not goat farmers, but it was like, this is where I don't want a big box. I'm going to get my grain here. I'm going to get my buckets here. You know what I mean? There was just something about them. And then we met people around the community in schools, and it was like, these people are wonderful.
Where if you have an issue, you have something going on, you say it to somebody, and it's not going to become necessarily gossip or hearsay. It's going to be, I know somebody who can help you, and you need to call this person, and it's going to be good for you.
I think that's incredible, because there's so many small communities that are on the verge of kind of becoming what Travelers Rest is, where you're seeing entrepreneurs coming out, and you're seeing a lot of diversity and a lot of different things and small things. But it's that unlock of, are we all talking to each other, though? Or are we scared to talk to each other? Or are we, whatever the past of maybe our community is, and so we're divided. That seems, I love that you said that it's like we can talk to each other without it being, there's no feud in the town, if you will.
Divisive,
like, even if it's, if it's like unconscious bias or whatever your town may have, if we stop talking to each other, nothing's going to get done. So just being able to go out there and start talking to people. And it takes one person to start having conversations and build that.
But, everybody does know you. And I feel like there's so many people I could go to. And when people come to the market, there's times that people have come and you knew they were like to burst out in tears, and I'll pull them away and say, is everything okay? And some have just broken out in tears. And I mean, like, that's why it was so hard during the past 2 years. Like, I'm like a hugger.
Yeah, to not have
and so there is a particular sense of togetherness, and it's not fabricated, and it is not fake. And I love that. And we kind of had that when we lived in a little town in Kentucky and Indiana. And a plug for TR, I think we're number one. I know we're number one, our TR market in South Carolina. And we're like number 4 in the region or something, Southeast.
We're climbing.
And we're climbing. If people want to vote for the TR Farmers Market, they're well deserving of an accolade for what they're doing with our community.
What is that makes us not relational anymore? Like, why are we so disconnected? And why are we like, oh my gosh, this is so rare, Travelers Rest in this, when this shouldn't be the exception to the rule? I mean, and I'm sure there's tons of reasons why, but in your opinions, what do you think?
I'll let you take it.
What can we do better?
You're getting real philosophical, but this is good because ultimately, in my estimation, it's going to come down to some kind of fear. We're all humans. And we're all part of the human experience. But ultimately, if you choose to not get involved in someone else's life, don't ask that question. Look, it's none of my business. I'm not going to go over there and ask them what's wrong, if they're okay. I'm not going to call that person. If you make those individual decisions, I want to stay to myself, an individual, I'm nobody's business, that you have to ask your question, why? Why do you think it's best for you to be that way? Because you're a human, and we're in this world where relationship is ingrained in who we are. So there's something that you're afraid of happening. Maybe it's something that's going to be a little out of your control, maybe out of your comfort zone, or I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know if they'll accept me. I don't know if they'll understand me. Well, there's a lot of things, and the I don't knows can keep you from doing a lot of stuff. And when it comes to relationship, I think, in our case, we rely so much on our faith and on our belief in God and how He structures the circumstances and the people and the things that happen in our lives so that we can know Him more and know ourselves more and better. And all He wants to do is teach us how to love well. And I think that's at the bottom line. And so these things that keep us from investing in each other have to do with I'm choosing not to go there. And you'd have to ask your question, why?
I
There
love
you go.
that. Yeah.
I think
Why?
It's
vulnerability
tough.
is very difficult. And I think the other thing is, somebody just said the other day to me, you know, we all probably have something dysfunctional in our background, you know, and
Absolutely.
so
Yes.
sometimes it's, you know, depending on what that is. I don't know if there's triggers or something, but sometimes a relationship is just built on is so much trust. And if that's ever been broken for whatever reason, it's
Then,
very
yeah.
hard to sometimes trust again.
You
Yeah.
choose not to build.
And I feel like, I think in both of our careers, whether it's shepherding, and he's learned so much more in that field than you ever will in the box church. And I didn't mean to say it like box church, but I just mean this is reality shepherding.
Yes.
And probably so much more lessons than the seminary ever could give. And I just feel like with the nursing background, I just always knew when I was 4, that's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we want to bring people here, because we like being around people. We really do. And if we can help you, in any way, you know, whatever the subject may be, we want to do that, and not at the expense of our relationship or our time in getting stressed out. That's the burnout factor is real. Again,
Yeah.
we suffered through that, trying to help everybody, trying to provide to all the stores all the milk, you know.
Yeah.
But I will tell you everything you need to know so that you can have your own.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Furthermore, if I can build on that, or hitchhike on that, shall we say, is that you know, you say it's just a bar of soap, but when a person uses it and then finds out, boy, I feel good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not scratching. I can sleep through the night. When somebody writes you a testimonial that says, I slept through the night for the first time in my life,
Their eczema. She was wrapped
that's
up
unbelievable
for eczema.
comment. That's unbelievable. So I say to myself, you know what this is? This is allowing a person to rest. And then that brings us full circle. And where do we live? Travelers rest. And so it's a prophetic picture of what the intention is and should be for every city, even if it's not named Travelers Rest. Ours is. So we have this picture to live up to that, you know what, we're all traveling. Some people stay, some people go. But in that process, we need to be able to rest and feel good at the end of the day about who we are and what we've been doing.
Thank you guys so much for all your time today. I really appreciate it. And we'll make sure all your info gets on the description so people can find you and learn some more. But thank you so much for taking the time out and talking with me today.
It's been our pleasure.
It's been a thrill to have you here, Rebecca.
Thank you to John and Rachel for joining us today. You can order your soap or learn more about upcoming events at redclaysoap.com and follow them on Instagram for your daily goat fix. Don't forget to follow Conversation Mill on Instagram for episode previews and join Conversation Mill at conversationmill.substack.com for additional chats with our guests, entrepreneurship tips, leadership training, and member-only content. And as always, thank you for listening to Conversation Mill and being part of our community.